first thing you experience is that you leave the life you're used to. You're giving up everything that you're used to in that life. As I say, you have to have a rucksack, and you take with you only what you can carry in that rucksack on your back. So most of your possessions are going to remain at home. And you'll soon find that whatever role you played at home, whatever you were at home, matters a lot less once you set off on the pilgrimage. One of the first things you'll hear on the Camino is, El Camino nos desnuda. The Camino strips you bare. It strips you of most of your possessions, and it does strip you of whatever you were at home. People are going to be a lot less interested in whether you were a lawyer or a banker or a plumber. What they'll be more interested in is what you're like when you're tired, when you're wet, when you're feeling fed up with all that walking and all that mud and all that snow or whatever it is that you've run into. St. James was one of the apostles. The story got started about 800, during the time when Spain was mostly run by the Moors. They had conquered most of the country apart from a thin strip in the north of Spain. And the story started to be spread about that St. James had been the apostle who was sent to Spain to preach there. That is not in the Bible, but it's also not in the Bible that St. James went anywhere else, or that any of the other apostles went to Spain. Later it said he went back, St. James, after preaching unsuccessfully in Spain, particularly in Galicia, in the northwestern corner of Spain. He returned to the Holy Land. He was beheaded by Herod in Jerusalem. His few disciples saved his body from being fed to the dogs outside the city wall, put it in a marble sarcophagus, and floated that out to sea, across the Mediterranean, through the Straits of Gibraltar, up to Galicia, where they managed to land it on the shore, carried the body from the boat onto the shore, laid it on a rock, and at that point the first miracle occurred. The rock softened, cradling the saint, as if holding it in his arms. And that was one proof that they had a future saint on their hands. In the early days, the miracle stories all involved these relics of the saint, and the active ingredient was the saints coming down to help pilgrims in trouble, in one sort of trouble or another. These days, the story has changed. It's the Camino that appears in the Camino lore, as in the Camino strips you bare, or as in the Camino will end up repairing you. The Camino always has surprises. In each case, the Camino, which really translates into the experience of the Camino, that's the active ingredient. That's what's working on you. And what's working on you as well, of course, is your own effort that you're putting into this. When you get to Santiago, you go and you check in at the pilgrim office. You show them a document called the credential, the pilgrim passport, which you've had stamped at various places along the way to show that you actually have walked the route that you say you've walked. You then get a certificate to say that you've completed the route. You go to a pilgrim mass in the cathedral, and you'll hear the priest read out the names, or not the names, but the origins of the pilgrims that have reached Santiago that day. For many pilgrims, the real hard part begins, because you do have to return home again after that. And home will be more or less the way your home was when you left it. If you're going back to a job, the job will be more or less the way it was when you left it. Whatever the situation is, it'll be more or less the same. And there's another saying then, that the true Camino begins only when you reach the end. What that implies is that the Camino has done you no good unless you've learned something from it. And the challenge now is to be able to somehow incorporate into your life when you return home what you know now that you didn't know before.